Hello ladies and gents, another video brought to you by Ants Hood, and today I'll be talking about my Formica Rufibarbis, an update on my Taboo ants. If you cast your minds back to almost a year ago when I actually picked these ants up and I did a video on it, and I put that link in the top right corner now, you'll see why they're a Taboo ant. So I'd advise watching that video if you haven't already before watching this. I've only actually ever featured these twice on my channel. Once was back nearly a year ago when I did my introduction to them, and then another one was at the start of this ant keeping season where I did a video, a new ant keeping season part 2, where I featured these. Now at the time, not that you can really see it here, they were in the ant hut modular nest and they didn't do too well in it at all. They literally went from 9 workers when I first got them to down to 4, and she just did not lay any eggs in that setup at all. So about halfway through the season, I decided that, I didn't film it though, that I'll put them in a test tube and see if they pick up that way. I left them on a shelf all alone so there's no vibrations, etc. And I wanted to see how they got on, and this is how they are now. As you can see, they've boomed. They've got probably about 30 plus workers now and a nice healthy pile of brood there, and the queen's just sat there. You'll see a bit better shortly. And that was because I put them back in a test tube because they would not lay in the ant hut setup at all. But as you can see from here, she is looking beautiful as always, and there's plenty of brood. Now the setup is Billy Basic. This is what they're in now, which is just the Ant Boy Outworld, Elite Outworld, which is okay for species this size. Anything smaller, they'll get out in its pants. But ants this size, they're great. And I've got them connected to a test tube. Now the test tube water, not that you can see it here, is actually starting to turn a bit yellow. So I'm contemplating moving them now while they're still active before winter proper kicks in. But I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. Because I got a bit desperate at the time because they weren't producing any young in any shape or form, or even laying eggs that I was aware of, even their abdomen was swollen up to no one's business, which tells me her ovaries are kicking into overdrive, but she just wasn't laying. I decided to add some pine needles, as you can see here. In that yellow bit there, that's actually some pine resin, or yeah, it's just resin. I was going to say amber then, but amber's the fossilised version of it. Silly me. You're probably asking yourself, why would I do that for? What difference would that possibly make? Now, a lot of Formica species, particularly Rufa and I think Rufibarbis as well, if I remember rightly from my research, have been found with kilos of pine resin in the nest. Now, scientists speculate that they spray the formic acid on this and it forms some form of antibacterial, anti-fungus like liquid stuff that they rub themselves against, so it will keep them nice and healthy. But that is only speculation at this time, guys. But I thought if they do it in the wild, they might want to do it here, so I added it. Now, have they taken any interest in the pine needles or the resin? No, not at all, but I'm still keeping it in there. Now, I'm sure you guys have watched the first video now, and you'll know from that first video, because I got them quite late in the season, I didn't hibernate them. And I'm not going to hibernate them now. And because you see that there, that's a big pile of eggs, and there was just some larvae underneath. You can just see the larvae there, actually. There's some larvae there. Now, if she's producing eggs and larvae like that, she's clearly not interested in hibernating yet. And I am not going to push the issue with these because she's super sensitive. Once the brood pile dies down and she settles down and starts looking at hibernating or showing signs of hibernation, then by all means, I am going to stick her in hibernation. But at the moment, I'm going to leave her be. What I've found with all the other Formica species I've got, including my slave makers and my Formica fuscas, is that they seem to be seasonal layers. They seem to do a big batch of eggs and then not bother for the rest of the season in the early stages. Now this is still in the early stages, and you can clearly see here that she's not just done a big batch then stopped. So I'm not going to push that. If she's happy to keep laying eggs, I'm happy to keep her awake, as it were. But I will keep an eye on her. Any signs of hibernation, and she's going into it. And I must say, she is a beautiful queen. I love the patterning on her back. I love the patterning on her abdomen. I just think she's gorgeous. Now, I apologise for today's footage. It has been a bit fuzzy, and the reason for that is the test tube's pretty disgusting. As you can see, there's a big dollop of dirt there, and it's hampered some of my viewing. But I do get, this is by far the best footage I've ever gotten of these. The queen's sitting on a nice mountain of brood. And this is what I mean about why I'm not looking at hibernating her just yet, because there is quite a healthy pile of larvae and brood, obviously, and I don't want to risk losing them, considering how up and down she's been since I've had her. Like, no brood, got her in November, didn't hibernate, I didn't start producing brood until I moved into a test tube, so I've got no interest in moving her now. But going forward, I am going to harvest some brood from her to give to my slave makers. Now my slave makers are hibernating now, so I'm not going to take any yet. Well, start to cool down to hibernation, and I wouldn't do it at this stage because she's still quite a small colony, and taking a couple of brood will be detrimental to this colony, so I'm not going to do that quite yet. But Wakushi, I've been talking to him for a long while, as you know well. I would class us as good ant friends now, and we do talk a lot. And he has actually developed and worked using a test tube setup, a vertical stack test tube setup with an outworld attached. Now that would be brilliant for these, because if I needed to harvest these or my Formica fuscas, to harvest their brood, I can just pop off a test tube, tap out some of the brood, grab it, then connect the test tube back up. And equally, I could also connect a fresh test tube regardless, and then leave the old test tube in the outward for them to move the larvae and stuff back again. Really good concept. Hopefully I'll get to test that one for him. Hopefully I'll be able to purchase it and test it for you guys to see and get my thoughts on that as well. But for for harvesting slaves for my slave makers, that will be ideal. I actually got these from Best Ants last year, but I know that Ant Antics, who's one of my preferred retailers, also provides these. So I would personally go to him again if I was going to buy any more. I'll put a link in his website so you can check it out anyway. But not that I'm pushing you towards Ant Antics, even though he's a Patreon. Yeah, that wasn't my intention. Ant Antics is great. Haha. No, I do actually love Formica species. I've got a Formica fuscas which laid a seasonal batch, a big batch of eggs, trebled the numbers, and then stopped the rest of the season. She's in cooling down for hibernation. You've obviously got my Formica sanguini or sanguia, my slave makers, which I love how they are as a colony and how they use slaves and stuff like that. They're cooling down currently. Now, I do actually have a Formica rufa, which are very difficult to keep. It was actually an experiment between me, Wakushi, and the colonialist. We kept them in 3 different ways because we all knew that they would be difficult to keep. I know categorically that Wakushi's has died. I believe that JB's has died, and I think mine may have died as well, because I've not seen any action for a while. If I do find out that they are alive, I am not going to try and hibernate them because I've not seen them for a while, but they are in a naturalistic setup. If I do actually they survive, I will do a video on it and explain everything that experiment was. But you can see from here, because I went off on a slight tangent, that they are beautiful. I love the banding, I love the colouring, and they're about twice the size as Lagus nigers, as I pointed out before. So yeah, I love them. I think they're great. I do hope that this colony does well. They are a protected species in the UK. These were sourced from Poland, if memory serves, so I'm not breaking any laws. And I'd love to see more conservation on these, but unfortunately I don't think that's occurring anymore. And on that sad note, that will be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. A big super massive thanks to my Patreon supporters: Adrian, Ant Antics, Ants on a Rock, Antimatter, David, PJ Grant, and Wakushi. Your continued support is very much appreciated. Thank you. Now, these are supposed to be midweek videos that are supposed to be shorter than normal, but this is over 8 minutes long. I really need to look at how long I gobble on for. But anyway, I'll stop talking rubbish. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and I hope you see the next one. So, bye-bye for now.